Hey folks, Brad again. Just taking the car to warm it up before I change the oil, but I thought I would take this opportunity to address a couple of folks maybe have the question of will you fit in one of these things? I'm sure I've been pretty clear. I'm 6'2", you know, 190-ish pounds. More than I'd like to be, I guess, but I have about you know, I'm pretty long in the back, so these things can be tricky sometimes. You know, I've had smaller cars even that were even tighter, but I really want you guys to know that other than, you know, leaning over at stoplights, like I've mentioned a couple times before, it's not that big of a deal. So I really strongly, you know, if you're 6'2", even 6'3", you can probably find a comfortable seating position simply because I can knock this thing back one more click if I really needed to. And I can tilt it one more to the back. So again, at 6'2", again, most of my height's in my back, but I have a, what did I say, like a 33 to 34 inch leg. You know, the jeans I buy, that's about what they sit at. You know, that's where I get my suits done, and they fit me okay. So it's not ridiculous, but it's you know, something to be aware of, I guess. The best thing to do, of course, is to try to sit in one and see if you can adjust it. But before you get that far, you might want to see if it's worth it. I'm here to tell you that it is, and here we go. And I'll once I can slow down a little bit, excuse me, I'll let you folks know. Sorry, and once I slow down a little bit here, I'm going to show you one other cool thing that I've done. Here, let's pause that. And once I can slow down to the point where it makes sense, you know, folks wanted to see how I fit in this car with the roof up. Once I slow down enough here, I'm going to do it while I'm rolling, because that's another cool little trick you can do to psych out the car, so you can actually put the roof up while you're rolling. You got to put the park brake up a click. That's fine. I don't want to defeat that, frankly, but this will allow you to do it so that when you're driving and you want to put the roof up, you can do it while rolling. And as soon as you roll, the speed sensor would stop the top from going up. But as you can see, I've found a way around that. It's pretty simple and it's totally reversible. So, do I use it a lot? Well, maybe a few times. It's kind of cool and gimmicky, but you know, I like it. I like being able to pull into a parking stall and put the roof up while I'm doing it. So that's that. Anyway, what else can I tell you that I haven't already told you about fitting in this car? You know, I'm not that broad. You know, compared to some folks, I got pretty broad shoulders, relatively speaking. But you know, these seats are awesome. You know, they fit me fine. I don't feel any constraint there. I'm not huge in the lower section either, so the seats I can fit fine. You know, there's lots of comfort, lots of space. And again, once you're in the driver's seat, you'll notice there's more space in the driver's seat than in the passenger seat. And that's just simply the nature of the car. And I love it because it lets a guy like me drive awesome little cars like these. I don't recall if I mentioned in another video, but one of my cars that I had long before this one was a 94 Miata, and that car was tight. I had a hard top on it, so in the winter I'd keep smashing my head off the roof every time I hit a bump. That wasn't particularly comfortable, but I got really good at taking the seat cover off that, and then I actually used a proper serrated knife to cut about an inch of foam off, and then, you know, I actually fit pretty good. When I sold it, I put the foam back on for the woman because she was pretty tiny. But anyway, yeah, as you can see, about an inch of space. If I had spikier hair, if I had any hair left at the top, then this would be more, but you know, I'd feel it. But this is fine, lots of room. I kind of do this once in a while. You'll see me duck when I need to look at lights with the roof on, but whatever, small price to pay. This thing's awesome. Tons of room, you know. Put your arm on the window. Lots of room for my knees, between my knees and the steering wheel and the shifter. It's not one of those compromises where you have to, you know, have the seat further back than you'd like, or things like that. So. And like I say, I'm warming this thing up right now so that I can drop the oil, because it's I work on other people's cars too in my spare time, when I'm not working, of course, and you know, you kind of forget about your own. So I do the I'll explain more in that video, but Mobil 1 1030 or any synthetic 1030, but I've actually always used Mobil 1 since I've had it. And like I say, this car was owned by a Honda executive before I got it for the first 55,000 kilometers, give or take. So it's always had Mobil 1 1030. Went through a little period of using a little more for a while, but it seems to have evened out. I think I replaced the PCV valve. It has two, so I replaced one and wanted to clean out the other. I actually probably need to do that again, but given that it's not using a lot of oil, maybe it's working better again. So anyway, I don't like unknowns, but hey, I'll take lower oil consumption, because again, the AP1s tend to use a little. That's fine, nothing to be worried about. You still think this thing still has all the power it ever had, I'm quite sure. You know, if I keep up with this video thing, I'm actually going to buy a, what the hell are those things called? In the good old days, there were G-Tech meters, but that's a long time since then. I want to actually start verifying some of the performance, because I'm going to do a few other things too. You've heard me say, if you've been following, and if you have, I appreciate that, I'm going to do the clutch this winter when I do take this thing off the road. And I'm going to do it the way the Speed Academy guys do. Again, check those guys out. They're awesome, and they're Canadian, so good on them for that. I'm going to drop the motor and transmission at the bottom with the car raised up so that I can separate it you know, out of the way of that. I don't mind being under cars, but when you're going to line up a clutch plate, a clutch disc and the pressure plate with the clutch alignment tool, things like that, you don't want to fiddle around while you're barely reaching. Plus, again, I'm kind of large, tall, so I'm kind of gangly. It's tough to fit me under the cars and actually be able to function under there. So more of that'll be a video too. I promise I'll do that, because I may need to refer back to it so I remember where shit goes when when it comes to putting them back together. But and again, for now though, pretty simple. Oil changes are dead simple, but if you've never done one, hey, that's good to know. So I'm just about back to my garage here, so I will show you the tools I use, show you how I get the thing up, simply because I have a pretty big floor jack, but it won't fit under this car because it's too low. So I'll show you the technique for getting a floor jack underneath it, how you change the oil, do it safely, and that's that. Dead simple, but if you've never done it, if you have never done it, forgive me, have a look. Alright, thanks folks. More videos to come, of course, as you wish. Again, let me know what questions you have, anything else that you might want to know. Again, and if this is the first time you're viewing a video of mine, thank you for watching. My name's Brad. I have a few videos up now on my S2000, and I'm going to have a few more. And this guy's pulled out in front of me. That's interesting. You know, again, I've had this thing for 12 years and counting, clearly. So anything you want to know about an S2000, about long-term ownership, again, I've had it for, I just rolled 180,000 kilometers, 190 kilometers ago. And I've owned it for over 12 years now. So if you want to know something about it, I'm a good person to ask. I don't know everything, but I know a lot. So happy to help out. Anyway, thanks folks. You know, if you liked this video, found it useful, please like. I'd appreciate that. It'll help me make more. And subscribe too if you want to learn more about the ridiculousness of up the hill of me owning my S2000 for a real long time. All the best, folks. I look forward to talking with you all soon. Bye.